Hi guys, thank you for attending the session. Just to start, I thought it's after lunch, so let's do a physical exercise. I want any of you guys whose main focus on their daily job is on quality to be on the right hand side of the room, and anybody whose focus is mainly development to be on the left hand side of the room. Could you change your place? Yeah, just, or we could shake the middle. My right is quality, my left is development. Let's see. Just want you guys to speak. Okay, now raise your hand who's working with code on daily basis. Okay. So it's good that we have some people. I was expecting managers in the middle that are not working with code and everything. It's great. Okay. So let's start. I mean, initially I wanted to have my presentation mainly on how we handle quality in the two teams that I'm working with. But then I thought that I can make it a little more generic so that I make it more useful for anybody who wants to kind of reuse it as a framework. So let's start with our goal, or how do we define the quality. For the rest of this presentation, I'm going to use this definition for quality. Basically, it's twofold. The goal of quality for us is to reduce the probability of a business loss due to bugs. At the same time, we want to increase the maintainability of the system. So just keep this in mind, and then maybe we can visit this later. I have two stories to tell you. The first one is, what's wrong with John? Before we go to John, let's have a look at this picture. How many of you guys have heard a statement similar to the one that you have here? Raise your hand. Okay, so about 60 to 70%. Very good. Okay, now let's go to John. So John is a team member. He's working in a software development company, and he's really happy. Apparently, he's a key member of his team. One day, he felt that he has a really bad headache, so he went to the doctor. And the first thing that the doctor did was to check his temperature. Apparently, he had a high fever. The doctor thought that, okay, this might be a common cold, but because the temperature was too high, he suggested to use a cold compress so that he doesn't get the seizure and things like that. So he did this. He did the cold compress, and he went back home, and he felt much better. So the next day he went to work. So this is his team, and John is. Do I have a pointer on this? Yes, this is John. Just to make sure. Okay. So, because he's a key member of the team, his team members, they asked him, okay, what if it happens tomorrow again? We don't want to lose you. This is a really important project. So what is your strategy not to get sick again? Or how are you going to handle it basically in future? He said, yes, I have a strategy. I'm going to wear my thermometer all the time. As soon as it shows that I have fever, I will do the cold compress. So after a few weeks, he's wearing a thermometer. He felt that he has headache again, and the temperature was high as well. So he did the cold compress, and the next day he died. This is really sad. I'm sorry. Okay, so this was just a filler because I have an hour to tell you about other things as well. So what do you think? What do you guys think went wrong with John? I mean, what was wrong with his strategy?
Well, he was going after the symptoms and not the causes. So just going after, oh, I'm sick, I should do this, but not why I'm getting sick.
Very good. Any other thing? I really like what he said. Okay. Cool. So basically, as you mentioned, whenever we try to address the symptom, it's in general, tests that are failing are only a projection of defects. Defects are only a projection of low quality. So if your strategy to have higher quality is to have more tests, it doesn't mean anything because you're always trying to address the symptom. You're not improving the quality. You will never improve the quality by adding tests. You can always improve the quality by writing a better code. So adding a new test will never, whatever quality state that you have, adding more tests will not improve your quality. So that is one thing that I want to make sure that we all are on the same page. So basically, what should be his strategy? So quality like health, like quality, has a number of steps that people can take to make sure that they are healthier. So, like I googled it, and there is this thing that says 7 rules for having a healthier life: getting enough fresh air, doing exercises every day, having proper sleep time, and keeping it clean, having good food, and drinking enough milk, and things like that. So basically, we need something like that in software development to increase quality. So these are, none of them are about testing. None of them are about a symptom. They're only actions that you can do to improve your life, to improve your health. So we need something similar in terms of quality strategy. Okay, so I talked about John. These are the lessons that I think we could learn from this story. You might disagree. Testing shows only defects, and as I mentioned, defects are superficial representation of the quality. So that should not be we should not have metrics on the number of defects. We should not have metrics on the number of tests. Those are just misleading us in terms of how we're defining our quality. Then we need to have a strategy for quality, similar to strategies that we have for health, going more to the gym, doing more exercises, having better food, and things like that. And one other thing is that it is like health. It is always less costly to do prevention. It is always more costly to get sick and go to the doctor and do treatments and everything. So it is also less costly to invest on prevention. So this was the first story. Now let's go to the second story. The second story is about Netflix, but before I go to Netflix, I want to show you this. So this, who here for their software development process is an agile developer? Okay, so it's about 90% of the staff. What is it?
We think so hard.
So now, if you have noticed, there is no mention of quality strategy. It is an iterative process that has some ideas borrowed from manufacturing, similar to lean concept. So they're all mainly being borrowed from existing industries, and we're taking advantage of the experience that other people had in those industries. So just to make my point, this is manufacturing, and if you go to lean development, you see this. So basically, they're always trying to reduce the waste. They're always trying to do repetitive things in a more efficient way and things like that. So, okay, what's wrong with this? I'm not suggesting that it's wrong that we're doing agile. Don't get me wrong. It has a lot of benefits, but I'm trying to have an angle towards the quality strategy. So what is different here? Anybody has any idea? What is different with what we are doing when they compare it to a parts manufacturing factory? What is it?
Well, for parts manufacturing, they have concrete physical requirements. If they're dealing with fault tolerances, they're dealing with physical, we're dealing with, they're not tangible. Our requirements are, I would like to do this, I'd like this to be better, I want my UI, I don't want this to crash it off when I do this weird behavior. It's much more of a qualitative versus quantitative.
Okay, that's a good point.
They're also doing the exact same thing over and over and over again.
I like this one better. So you see, that's the problem, right? We never repeat ourselves. I mean, whenever we have a user story, whenever we have a feature, yes, there could be situations that we redo something. There could be situations that we could, I cannot even imagine that happening, but in a parts manufacturing company, you are always building the same thing, same freaking things every day. So that's the reason that it could be undoubtful that a process for quality in a manufacturing company could make sense for in our industry. The reason is that this is a repetitive process in terms of the product that is even being built. So ours, what is the closest to our industry? What any guess?
Right.
So the closest process to our industry is actually writing. Any closer guess? Because it is an intellectual kind of process, right? I mean, you're always writing something new. You're not repeating yourself. And at the same time, you want to make sure that, what I'm writing will be a bestseller. But it's really hard to come up with a strategy to have that, right? So what any other guess? What is, for me, there is something that is even more closer.
Cooking.
What is it? Cooking? No, I don't know. I didn't think about it, so maybe it's closer. What I thought about is producing series. So because each episode, let's say they have the budget for a season. Each episode they have something new, and at the same time they want to have enough viewers so that they get renewed. So they need to have a certain level of quality, and this is perceived quality from the viewer's point of view, which is really similar to our case, because whatever quality that we talk about here, it is the only thing that is important. Is the perceived quality from the end user point of view. So I think it is really similar to producing a service. Now, what makes a successful TV show? So there are a number of things that when I did my research, I found. So if you have good humor, if you have complex characters, if you have dynamism, if you have a good pilot episode, and if you have a slow burn story. So these are the good qualities of a series. So based on these things, the networks usually decide whether to buy a series for broadcasting or not. So this is the initial point. This is how they make a decision. Now, all of these series that you see here, they went through the same process. And they got all canceled. So all of these, they got canceled in 2015. And many more, I mean, just they don't have enough space. So, in fact, there is about 70% chance that any new TV program or any new series will get canceled before the end of the second season, which is really high if you think about it. I think we have similar problems in the software industry. But now, do you remember what was the name of this story? No, it's a shame, huh? Okay, it was how Netflix started, right? Okay. So let's go to Netflix. Like recently, I cannot say recently, like let's say starting like 5 years ago, Netflix has started to buy its own series and even producing its own series. You might, and the thing is that the what do you call it? The data so far shows that this is the other side of the coin, right? It is 70% chance of getting renewed to seasons 5 or 6 for Netflix, which is completely different than traditional networks. So these guys are doing something that is That is really different. They can detect whether something has a good quality from the viewer's point of view. And I said that, okay, maybe there is something for us to learn. Let's talk about this. How many of you guys are watching House of Cards? Well, yeah, okay, a good number, I would say. Not too good. So, how do you think Netflix decided to go with to pay for House of Cards? What is it? Go ahead.
Well, it was already a successful British TV series.
That's another good point.
They looked at what every other series did and then tried to do it more.
Almost. Okay. So what they did is this. So David Fincher, first they based on the data that they have, they noticed that the movies of David Fincher have a good completion rate. They're on their user base because at Netflix you can know that the viewers finished which series or which movie basically. So they knew that there is a good user base, there is a good majority of their user base that finished the movies, especially the social network that was directed by David Fincher. At the same time, as Terry mentioned, they knew about the British version of House of Cards, and that one also had a really good completion rate. At the same time, somebody said, yes, you said it, yeah. They noticed that there is a good overlap between people who watched House of Cards and who finished movies whether done by David Fincher or have Kevin Spacey as the actor. So they had a really, really good confidence that if they pay for this series, they will have a good success rate. So now they made this decision. So this is the pre-green light. They're saying that okay, we're going to pay for it. Now how do they make a decision whether to keep it or to renew it? I think I already mentioned some of the things, but they have whatever type of information that you can think of. They know when did you pause? When did you rewind? What were the scenes that you wanted to watch again? What was the date? How is it related to holidays? What was it the weekend? What is your zip code? How does it matter in terms of the area that you have and everything? So they have a lot of these factors that they consider to come up with some sort of metric that should tell them whether to continue or not to continue. What they mentioned about these types, so let's say they have a function. They have a function that you give it the inputs, and it will tell you whether to renew or not. The only thing that they mention is that this is not a metric based. I know that we are calling it a metric, but this is not a metric based strategy. This only shows the direction. They have a number, and for this season, and then, or for each episode basically, and they will check the same number for the next episode, and it will tell them whether they are going in a right direction or not. They will never make a decision based on the absolute value of the number. So it is a directional metric. It is important, I will get back to it. I think it is important. So what is the difference in Netflix approach? That is a question. Data-driven.
Well, they're not TV, so all your episodes get to be released in the order that you want to watch them. You don't find that you've missed an episode and have to come back, and you're not interrupted 20 times by commercials.
Okay. For sure, I think that will have some impact on the metrics that they're gathering. But what my question is mainly, what is different in the strategy?
Feedback.
What is it?
Faster feedback.
They have a feedback, yes, you're right. So if you didn't notice the feedback, there is a feedback loop that tells them, do we continue? Do we continue? So that is the feedback. What else? The feedback is a feedback loop, right? So it will basically renew itself.
Well, they're not looking for an absolute cutoff, like you need to make this much money to be renewed. They're looking for, how are you doing compared to how much are you putting? Are you doing better? Are you, like, it's not, you must be this tall.
Yeah, it is directional, you're right.
And it's like, well, you must be growing this fast to get to it. So just, they're looking for long-term growth instead of short-term.
You're right. Okay. So I told you the other one, and I'm sorry, maybe I was not clear. So what happens is that, how do they make a decision whether to go for a series at the beginning or not? Yes, so they have some prediction models. They have a predictive analysis at the beginning that will tell them how to make their decision. So there are two things basically, two things that you mentioned. One is that they have a predictive analysis kind of a step to make sure that what to do next, which series to buy, how to invest their money. And then there is also a feedback loop to see for the current investment, do we continue, do we make a change? How do we take an action? So these are, so far out of these two stories we have 5 things to consider basically. So the first one was that a sole focus on testing is not a strategy. That is, testing, nobody is saying it's not important, but it's not a strategy. Then the fact that we need a strategy for quality, and I think we all agree that it's less costly to have preventative measures at the beginning instead of just being reactive to things. And also, having a predictive analysis will help us make better decisions, and also a feedback loop can tell us whether whatever that we're doing, are we doing it good? Should we make a change? Things like that. Okay. So now we go to quality strategy. So in our domain, we talked about doing preventions. In our domain, we have, let's say, 3, well, we have more, but let's say these are the 3 distinct phases. One is before coding, then is coding, and then is after coding. So where do you think we should invest more? Where? Before coding, I agree. So before coding, for each of them, we should have a number of practices. So for before coding, we have proactive practices, then we have active practices during the coding, and then we have reactive practices after the coding. Before the coding, this is what we are doing. It doesn't. So for me, this part is, and it will be completed more and more as we go to this next slide. This is the framework. This is what you fill it with. This is whatever your own practices that you think is useful before coding. For us, we found that it is important to hold design sessions. In our design sessions, it's a whole team activity. Everybody will have a look at how we're going to design for the new user story, because we think that the more pairs of eyes we have on the same problem, the earlier we can detect problems with a solution. So the whole idea of having it as a whole team practice is to catch things early on, at the design time, before it goes and it gets implemented, before it goes after it's coding and found by the customer and things like that. Another practice that we always do is doing a goal, cost, benefit type of analysis for anything. So let's say tomorrow I say, oh, our daily Scrum sucks, and let's walk the board. Everybody who wants to talk about what they did, they need to. Where's Amir? They need to do a belly dance before talking about their story. We're not against it. What we do is that we say, what is the goal that we currently have for the product, for the release, for the sprint? Is it aligned? Is it trying to achieve any of those goals? That's one question. The other one, how much cost does it have? How much time does it take to do the belly dance? So, and then if a good number of people in the team feel that, oh, yeah, it might have some good impact, we will say, okay, let's run it. We are always for trials. We will say, okay, let's time box it to 3 sprints. After the 3 sprints, we see if our daily Scrum got better. Maybe everybody is more attentive now. Maybe everybody is listening better. So this is another thing that we do. Then for after the design sessions, we do quick whiteboarding whenever we have issues with how at the let's say at the coding level, not at the coding, at the algorithm level, if we're not sure how to implement something, we do quick whiteboarding. We are always for preventing silos. We don't have any specific person in the team to do a specific thing. Everybody should be able to do everything, not at the same level. Not everybody has the expertise to do the same thing that someone else in the team can do, but this is just to prevent silos and to make sure that if somebody gets hit by the bus next day, we have someone else in the team to do the job. Then we will reduce the work in progress, and we have development guidelines in terms of coding conventions, things like that in place. So I did it for before coding. I'm not going to say the whole thing for the coding itself. During coding, we do topic dojos, we do pairing extensively, because we also think that during the development, if you have another pair of eyes watching the code or helping you, there is a good chance that they can detect a problem before it gets to the develop branch. And we also focus on automated testing. Everything that we have is unit tested. It has integration tests. It has E3 tests. And we also value proactive business feedback. This means that this is basically one of the things that we ask POs to help us with that. So whatever we do, it doesn't, because in traditional Scrum, you finish the job and then you show it to the PO to ask them, oh, what do you think about it? But what we do is during development, we always show them, oh, this is how it looks like so far. This is how it works so far. So that they can also catch things from the business side of things. So that we catch things as early as possible. After coding, we do extensive code reviews, we do feature exploration. Basically, we get to a room, all of the team, to explore the feature that we're going to release to make sure that it has a certain level of quality. And we have continuous integration. We have our CI running, all the tests that we have. Now, so we talked about this. Then there was another thing. You remember there were two more things. One was having a predictive analysis type of thing. This is another thing that we're doing unofficially. So one of the things that we did with a few guys at Heidar was a recommendation system for implementing user stories. So basically, the idea is that there is a system, you give it your new user story, and it will tell you, oh, there is a good chance that your user story will be implemented in this class file, it will change this property file, it will change this localization file, and things like that. So this is a kind of a predictive analysis that we were talking about, because it could be used as a checklist. So you might be an expert in whatever that you're going to make a change, but you can still use this recommendation as a checklist to make sure that, oh, maybe I missed the localization file. This is recommending that. Or the whole thing is based on previous data, right? Because it has a set of user stories, and we have everything maintained on Git, and there is correct link between them. So basically, if you think that the recommendation doesn't make sense, you can feed it back to the recommendation system to tell, oh, localization file was not valid for my course. So I'm not going to talk more about this, but we published this as an international conference, and it was actually awarded as a best way. So we talked about predictive practices. Now the last thing. So we have the predictive analysis. Now we talk about the loop, because we need a feedback loop. How do we know if any of these practices are working correctly? How do we know? I mean, any guess? How do you know if something is working in your team, in your product? How do you measure? Seriously?
Well, there's a lot of manual testing now too. So people fool around with it, and if it doesn't work as they expect it to work, that usually raises some flags, and then they'll relook at it.
How do you know if you're getting better? Number of bugs?
You can see the bug list shrink.
Yeah, that's number of bugs. Anything else? How do you know if you're getting better? Number of defects, as mentioned. Anything else? That is true, but I'm just asking mainly on the quality of the product. How do you know if it's getting better? Go ahead.
No customer tickets.
Yeah, that is actually really good. I mean, for products that have been released to the customers, that is actually a really, really good source of information. But not every product is already released.
I usually can tell because I actually look at the software, I use it, and I'm like, wow, I actually like that comes in when you're using it, that you know you're doing something.
So you think the next release you like it more?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's fascinating.
And the more it's easier to use, it's
Okay.
faster. You just feel that.
Only if we had many of you in our
Even by your own definition, though, isn't fewer customer tickets really the final indicator of?
I'm saying it's really important. I agree with you. Go ahead. Customer feedback, I think, is similar to the tickets that are received from the customer. Okay, let me tell you how we did it, basically. So this was a question: how is the quality of our product, and is the strategy that we have, is it actually working? So as many of you mentioned, one of the things that we could look into is the number of defects. I will not talk about this, I will go to the next slide. So this is a number of defects in different areas that we gathered for, I'm not saying what is the product here, it's a fictional product at a company. So this is a number of defects that we gathered, we found for this release, which was 6.3. Then this is same type of defects for the previous, and this is there is a yearly of difference between these two releases. So some of them were about the build process, some of them were at the components level, some of them were corner cases, some of them were design, integration, and things like that. So it is really hard to do a comparison on a table. So then we thought, okay, let's just make a graph out of it. And so then we saw, yeah, some of them, so the red one is the new value for the defect count. So in some places it's decreasing, in some places it's increasing. And what is anything? Could you say what could be wrong with this type of comparison?
Problem is here the members of the team can change. That means we are comparing a snapshot from one period of time, which is not the same.
That's true. That's one thing. Anything else?
How do you know this is going to be?
No, we don't know. We don't know.
Well, the requirements for 6.1 might be completely different than 6.3. 6.1 might be much more of a under the hood version. 6.2 might be much more front.
For sure. That is a really important thing. Again, we never repeat ourselves. Maybe the things that we had in release 6.1 was much more complicated. Maybe what we have in 6.3 is much more complicated. And maybe we did less features in 6.3, or maybe we did less features in 6.1. So this is not a good comparison. A better comparison is a normalized one, right? I mean, as people talk today about how we normalize data and everything. Normalization basically means that you have a number of occurrences during a certain period of time, and let's say if I go to the gym 40 times, 60 times a month. So basically, if I divide 60 by 30, it's 2 times a day. And if the next time I say I go to gym, it will never happen, 120 times in 2 months. So 120 times in 2 months, it needs to be divided by 60, so it's again 2 times a day. So there is no difference between these two because we could normalize and we could compare. So now if we normalize it out of 100% of defects that we have, we will have a percentage of what were the areas that we had the defects. I will not bore you with this. So this is 6.1, this is 6.2. Just to make it more complicated for you guys, the color coding is different, so you can later find it. So you should actually go and see the legend to find out what improved and what not improved. So still, it's because of the same problems that we talked about. It's really hard to make a fair comparison because the metric that we're gathering has too many variables in it in terms of the number of people who are involved. The features that we've worked on, the complexity and everything. So we thought, okay, let's come up with a variable that is less dependent on those things. And this is not something that we came up with. This is an existing metric in the industry, so which is a defect density. Basically, we say, oh, for this release, we committed 2,000 lines of code, and this is how many defects were found. And for another release, the team committed 5,000 lines of code, and this is the number of defects that they found. So this is based on something that is more tangible and less dependent on all other factors, because we reduce the granularity. That is a common strategy to get independent of other factors. So basically, we only focus on severe defects because that is our showstopper. We cannot release if we have blockers or criticals. So let's say release 1, release 2, release 3. This is a question again. Which one has a better quality? We don't know because the number of defects cannot tell us. So let's say in release 1, we had 2,000 lines of code committed or changed basically. The second one, 1,000, and then the third one, 5,000. And this is, just to make it easier, this is 1,000 lines of code. So you don't need to divide if it matters for you. So basically the first one is 75 defects per 1,000 lines of code. The second one is 90, and the third one is 4. No, am I good? Yeah, 4. Okay. So then it is more fair. Then we can make a comparison between different metrics. Okay. So this is the value that we had for 6.1, which was 2.1, and we reduced it to 1.5. So, okay, we're good, we're happy. I think it looks like that it's working. So, just extra information, this is being used at IBM. They are using residual defect density, which is basically how many of them will be found by the customer, not the team. At Microsoft, the number for defect density is 15, and this is not severe defect density, this is any bug that they find, so it's 15. Usually for a well-maintained open source project, these are small ones, it's 0.65, and for a commercial one, a small, mature commercial one is 0.50. Okay, so now you know about this, now you know that we have a SSD metric, which is which could help us to see if we're doing good or not. Now let's talk about strategy. So let's say we have this number for one release, then we have another number for next release. What should be our strategy? What is it? Could you be a little more loud? To make it lower?
Well, I would drill down and get your SD for each type. Is it component? Is it legacy code? Is it UX? So that way you can see what areas you need to focus on.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, I suck at presentation. So, what I wanted to tell you is that, oh, this is really similar to doing this. If you only go with numbers to define your strategy, it's wrong. You need to, because he did the same thing. Number is going down. So we should never define a strategy around just numbers. We need proper analysis. That's why you go to the doctor. That's why you never define a strategy based on numbers. That's why we have 7 rules of health. That's why we need those practices. So the whole idea is to continue those practices, but at the same time, now we have more data. Now in terms of analysis, our hands are more open. So we know that what is the green one? Like at the component level, we had a lot of defects. Or at the design level, which is the UI UX design, we had a lot of defects. So based on these numbers, based on these areas, we can say, okay, these are the practices that we need to focus on more, probably. These are the things that if you work on more, hopefully things will reduce and hopefully things will get better. It doesn't mean that we're not going to use that number that we talked about, because we are always going to use this number. But how? The same way that Netflix is using the numbers. These are only directional. This can tell us, are we going in the right direction or not? This will not tell us what should be the next step. Should we reduce it to another number? What happens if the next time is 1.7? Nothing. Nothing will happen. It is still going down from 2, but it's a lower rate. It is going up from 1.5, but it could be a minimal, local minimum, with 1.5. So we never define a strategy based on numbers. So I think I tried to make this clear. So this is the whole framework that we talked about. So it has a good quality strategy framework needs to have a number of things. One is that it needs to focus on prevention. So the more practices you have at the beginning, the better off you should be in terms of how much you get out of your investment. In terms of active practices, these are the ones that we are doing. In terms of reactive ones, those are the ones that we're doing. We should have a predictive analysis kind of component that could tell us, that could help us in making better decisions, and we always need a feedback loop to see, are we going in the right direction or not? So this is completely different than the first slide. The first slide was, if you need better quality, you need to add more automated tests, or you need to have more tests. This is not what we are advocating. We are saying that we need proper quality strategy, similar to what you do for your health. You need to take proper actions, and at the end, you should have a feedback loop that can tell you what to focus on next. And also, you should have a directional metric that can tell you whether you're going in the right direction. So that is the whole thing. I don't think I have another slide. That's just a reminder. The goal, okay, that's actually an important point. So we talk about all of these things in our teams, but there is one thing that we always try to make sure. Even if you're not doing any of those steps, even if you're not doing anything correctly, have this goal in mind. Whatever that you want to do, make sure that you are moving towards this goal. Whatever that you're doing. If you can justify it, just do it. So that is just to have an abstraction level on top of the framework that we have to make sure that if something is not in our framework, yes, we have a goal, and if you can justify your action towards this goal, it should be good. And somebody, I think Amir mentioned that one of the things that could affect the metric that we're getting is the number of people in the team, the expertise of that team. So in our case, we had a QA person in our team in 6.1, and he left in 6.2. And the number of defects that they found in 6.2 was actually higher in many areas. So it doesn't mean that, well, he's a really cool guy and he's an expert. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that even without a person in our team with a focus on only testing, we achieved a good result. This goal that I talk about, I want all of us to have this goal. So at the beginning when I asked you whose main focus is development, and they sit on the left-hand side, my left-hand side. So that is not good. Everybody's focus should be quality. It doesn't matter that we don't have a quality person. Everybody's focus should be quality, because at the end of the day, that is what is going to impact our reputation, the success of the company, the success of the product, and everything. So hopefully next time that I come here, if I have a talk, everybody will be sitting in the middle, or hopefully at the right-hand side, because it should be everybody's focus. In our team, we don't have a QA person, and everybody is a T-shaped developer. We have different expertise in the team, but everybody writes tests, has a concern for quality, and tries to make the product better and better every day. So I'm not going to focus on that, the last point anymore. That is my presentation. Any questions? I have a few more slides after the thank you. I was hoping that you ask questions related to that, so I look smart ass and show you. Thank you.